The first light of dawn rose slowly over the great kingdom of Zawanda. The sun pushed through the early morning mist, spreading a warm golden glow across the land. Birds called from the tops of ancient trees, and the wind carried the soft scent of burning incense from the palace temple. It was the hour when even the strongest warriors bowed their heads, for in Zawanda, mourning belonged to the ancestors. Inside the kingdom's walls stood a palace that seemed to shine with the pride of the entire nation. Its tall pillars were trimmed with gold, catching the sunrise and throwing bright reflections across the white marble floor. Carvings of lions, eagles, and ancient symbols guarded every corner. The palace roof glittered like a crown made for the sky itself. Servants moved quietly through the long hallways, their sandals whispering against the polished floor. They carried baskets of fruit, jugs of fresh milk, and incense of the morning rituals. Even in their rush, none dared to break the silence that honored the ancestors. 2 royal guards stood at the palace gate, their spears crossed. Their armor was a blend of the old and the new, metal plates strengthened by modern engineering, painted with the bright tribal patterns of their forefathers. Their faces were stern, but their eyes carried the weight of centuries of duty. "Another day begins," one guard murmured. "May it bring honor to the kingdom," the other replied. Beyond the palace walls, the world changed sharply. The shining towers of the modern city stood tall in the distance, touching the sky like the fingers of giants. Their glass windows caught the sunlight and sparkled like diamonds. Cars rolled through busy roads, horns echoing faintly across the land. Billboards flashed bright colors, and the sound of the modern world hummed in the air. But just behind the palace, past the marble fountains and trim gardens, the old village lived quietly. The roads were dusty, lined with small mud houses and wooden stalls. Children chased each other barefoot. Elders sat under the wide shade of an ancient baobab tree, and women prepared morning porridge in clay pots. Life moved slowly there, untouched by the speed of the city. To walk from the palace to the village was like stepping through time. One moment, luxury ruled the eyes. The next, tradition ruled the heart. Villagers often looked toward the bright city lights and whispered about change. Some feared it, some welcomed it. Some wondered whether the old ways would survive while the new world grew louder each day. Inside the palace, the royal family believed deeply in keeping traditions alive. Every morning, the elders poured palm wine onto the earth, whispering prayers for protection. Drums sounded soft and steady, calling the spirits to witness another day in Zawanda. Yet even as the rituals continued, the skyscrapers beyond the walls shone like a challenge, a reminder that the world was moving fast, even if the kingdom wished to stand still. A gentle tension lived in the air, a silent tug between the richness of the past and the pull of the future. It was in this place, in this meeting of 2 worlds, that destiny would rise. For somewhere in the village, a young maid was already awake, sweeping the ground of her small hut. And somewhere in the palace, the prince, heir to the kingdom, was staring out the window, watching the city lights fade into day. Neither knew that their lives would soon collide. Neither knew that the ancestors were watching. And neither knew that their story would begin with the rising sun of Zawanda. The sun climbed higher over the mighty kingdom of Zawanda, revealing the king's palace in all its glory. The palace rose like a giant guardian over the land, its gold-trimmed pillars shining so brightly they looked like fire catching the morning light. Every pillar carried carvings of lions, symbols of strength, courage, and the ancient spirit that protected the royal bloodline. At the entrance stood 2 massive lion statues, carved from black stone. Their eyes seemed alive, as they watched every soul who stepped through the palace gates. Elders often said, "Those lions do not sleep. They carry the eyes of our ancestors." Many believed it, for Zawanda was a kingdom where the past still breathed. Wide courtyards stretched behind the gates, lined with palm trees that swayed in the warm breeze. The ground was paved with polished red stones that glowed under the sun. Servants moved in rhythm, carrying baskets of fresh fruit, clay pots of water, and long cloths embroidered with royal symbols. They walked with heads slightly bowed, honoring the sacred space they served. Elite warriors guarded every corner. Their armor shone like metal sunlight, each piece marked with tribal patterns passed down for generations. They stood tall, spears at their sides and eyes sharp enough to see danger in the shadow. One of the warriors, a tall man named Baluk, whispered his partner, "A new day rises. The ancestors watch. May we stand worthy." His partner nodded. "We serve with strength until our bones return to the earth." Their voices carried the weight of duty, words spoken not just by guards, but by sons of the kingdom who knew the palace was more than stone. It was history. It was pride. It was the heart of Zawanda. Inside the main hall, sunlight spilled through giant windows made from tinted glass, casting colors across the gold-trimmed walls. The air carried the scent of burning sage, a reminder of the morning rituals led by the royal elders. Soft drums played somewhere deeper inside, steady and calm, like the heartbeat of the kingdom itself. The hallways were lined with statues of past kings and queens, each carved with such detail that their faces seemed ready to speak. Young children visiting the palace often whispered, "Do they come alive at night?" And the elders would smile and reply, "Only in your dreams, little one, only in your dreams." Beyond the palace, far in the distance, skyscrapers rose into the sky. Tall, proud, made of steel and glass. They looked like towers from another world. Their bright reflections fell over the palace roofs, as if reminding the kingdom that change was coming, whether welcomed or not. Yet behind the palace, in the opposite direction, the old village roads stretched quietly. Mud houses stood in rows, smoke rising from clay pots as women prepared morning stew. Children fetched water from wells, their laughter echoing through the narrow paths. Elders sat beneath large trees, their wooden walking sticks resting beside them as they shared stories older than the palace itself. It was a strange balance, modern towers shining ahead, ancient roads resting behind. The palace stood between them, like a bridge connecting two worlds. But deep inside, everyone knew that bridges often carried heavy storms. In the center courtyard, the king himself stepped out, dressed in a flowing robe woven with gold threads. His crown sparkled under the sun, catching the eyes of the guards, who instantly straightened. "May peace guide our land today," the king said, raising his hand. The warriors bowed deeply. "May your words become truth, your majesty." The king looked toward the village. For a moment his face softened, troubled by thoughts only he understood. Then he looked toward the modern city. The light in his eyes changed, sharper, filled with questions about the future. Between these two worlds, one story was waiting to be born, a story no one yet expected, a story that would begin with Maid, poor, humble, and unseen, and a prince whose destiny was about to change forever. The wind blew gently across the palace grounds, almost as if the ancestors whispered, "The path has begun." The kingdom of Zawanda awakened slowly as the first rays of sunlight touched the palace roof. Even before the city's skyscrapers began to glitter in the distance, the palace grounds were already alive with the sounds of tradition. Deep inside the courtyard, drums throbbed like a heartbeat, steady, ancient, and powerful. Each beat echoed against the gold-trimmed halls, filling the morning air with something sacred. Elders in long, earth-colored robes circled the sacred fire pit. Their walking sticks tapped gently on the stone floor as they moved, chanting old words taught by ancestors long gone. Smoke from burning herbs rose into the sky, forming thin spirals that danced upward, as if carrying the prayers of the people to the heavens. A young servant girl whispered to another as she carried a basket of millet, "Do you hear them? The chants sound stronger today." Her friend nodded with wide eyes. When the ancestors speak, even the wind listens. Near the palace entrance, warriors stood in perfect formation. Their spears reflected the rising sun, and the patterns on their armor told stories of battles fought generations ago. Yet behind them, not far beyond the high walls, stood the tall steel towers of the modern city. Cars rushed past, their horns echoing faintly across the fields. The contrast was clear, two worlds breathing side by side, but never fully touching. Inside the main ceremonial hall, a group of young palace drummers sat cross-legged on woven mats. Their hands moved in rhythm, creating layers of sound that filled the massive space. Boom, 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 ta. Each stroke carried meaning, guiding the people through the morning ritual. Old Mother Liana, the chief caretaker of the royal traditions, walked between them, "Steady your hands," she said gently. "Each beat carries a memory of our fathers. Do not play like children beating pots." "Yes, Mama Liana," the drummers answered, sitting taller. She smiled, though her eyes carried the weight of wisdom. "Good. Let the ancestors hear your strength." Beyond the hall, a group of maidens placed clay bowls filled with water and flower petals on the palace steps. This ritual welcomed peace into the kingdom. Every morning, they repeated the act, no matter what storms waited beyond the walls. One maiden spoke quietly. "The world outside moves faster every day. Do you think the palace will ever change?" Another shook her head. "As long as our king breathes, these rituals will not die." At that moment, the king stepped into the courtyard accompanied by his spiritual advisor, Elder Mzondo. The king's robe brushed against the stone floor, embroidered with symbols of the rising sun and the roaring lion, marks of leadership. The drums softened as he approached. Elder Mzondo raised his hand and spoke in a deep, trembling voice. "Your Majesty, today we honor the path of your ancestors. The land may change, cities may grow tall, but the soul of Zawanda must remain strong." The king nodded slowly. "Let the world outside shine with glass and steel," he replied. "But within these walls, we will keep the fire of our people alive." The maidens bowed, the warriors lowered their spears, and the elders' chants grew stronger, swirling in the air like ancient spirits returning home. For a moment, the modern world outside felt distant, like a story from another land. Inside the palace, time seemed to stand still, wrapped in drums, chants, smoke, and tradition. Yet, deep in the king's eyes, a shadow of worry flickered. He glanced toward the city skyline, its towers cutting through the morning sky like sharp spears. The old ways were strong, but the new world was creeping closer every day. Something was coming, a change, a twist of fate that no ritual could stop. And in that moment, somewhere far from the palace, a poor maid was waking up, unaware that her destiny was quietly moving toward the golden gates of Zawanda. The morning sun had fully risen over the kingdom of Zawanda, and its golden light poured across the palace courtyard. Shadows stretched long over the polished stone floors as the royal guards took their positions around the great entrance. These guards were not ordinary men. They were the symbol of the kingdom's strength, standing between the ancient world and the rising modern age beyond the palace walls. Their armor glimmered under the sunlight, but was unlike any armor seen in the neighboring cities. Each piece blended modern metal plates with tribal carvings, forming designs that told stories of their ancestors. Spirals symbolizing unity, triangles for courage, and the carved lion-fang marks that represented the spirit of the kingdom's founder. A young palace boy paused as he carried a basket of fruits across the courtyard. He gazed at the guards with wide eyes. "Look at them," he whispered. "Their armor shines like the city buildings, but it still has the touch of our people." One of the older guards, broad-shouldered and stern, heard him and smiled. "Young one," he said, "metal can protect the body, but symbols protect the spirit." The boy blinked. "Does a symbol really have power?" The guard tapped his chest armor, where a carved eagle feather lay embedded. "This," he said, "remind me that even when the world changes, I must remain who I am. Without it, I am only steel. With it, I am Zawandan." Behind them, the sound of passing cars drifted faintly from a modern city outside the palace walls. Tall skyscrapers pierced the sky in the distance, cold, sharp, and fast. But here inside the palace, time moved differently. Tradition pulsed like a heartbeat that refused to stop. A younger guard named Kato adjusted his helmet, which carried a painted red stripe symbolizing bravery. "Commander," he said softly, "the world outside grows louder every day. Do you think we will be forced to change too?" The commander's voice was calm, but heavy with wisdom. "Change will come, Kato. Even the river changes its path as the years pass. But hear me well. Never let change wash away your roots." The words hung in the air like a warning carried by the wind. In the far corner of the courtyard, 2 guards stood beside a tall pillar carved with ancient symbols. They watched the city skyline with tightened jaws, as if they feared the growing steel towers might one day reach across the plains and swallow the kingdom. One guard murmured, "The city lives fast. It forgets yesterday quickly. The other answered, "But we remember yesterday. We honor yesterday. That is why we stand here." Their voices blended with distant drums echoing from inside the palace. The steady rhythm wrapped around the courtyard like a protective circle. Just then, Elder Mzondo, the king's spiritual advisor, walked past the guards. His long staff tapped the ground with every step. He paused, looked at the armor closely, and nodded. "Good," he said. "I see the balance between worlds on your bodies. Metal for the present, symbols for the ancestors. You guard not just the palace, but the soul of our people." The guards bowed deeply. For a moment, everyone stood still. The sun, the drums, the city skyline, the old dirt village road behind the palace, the armor that was both ancient and modern. All of them existed side by side, like two worlds holding hands, even if one pulled harder than the other. As Elder Mzondo walked away, he whispered under his breath, "The day is coming when these walls will be tested. Let the guards be ready, for the world outside does not always respect the world within." His words drifted through the courtyard like a quiet prophecy, and the guards, standing tall with their blended armor, tightened their grips on their spears, knowing that whatever storm was coming, the kingdom would need them more than ever. The sun rose slowly over the wealthy kingdom of Nandaba, painting the land with warm gold. The palace stood proudly at the border, where ancient tradition met the edge of a modern city. Its tall walls were carved with the faces of ancestors, warriors, mothers, and kings who once guarded the land with their lives. Their stone eyes seemed to watch everything, as if reminding the people that time may change, but the heart of a kingdom must not. Inside the palace, the morning drums rolled like distant thunder. The halls shimmered with gold trim, shining like rivers of sunlight. Smooth marble floors stretched long and wide, and every corner held a symbol of old wisdom. Carved wooden masks, lion-shaped pillars, and baskets filled with sacred cowrie shells. Two guards stepped forward, their footsteps strong and steady. They wore modern armor, polished and firm, but each piece carried a tribal mark, a painted sun, a spear, or a woven pattern from their ancestors. The mix of old and new made them look like protectors from two worlds. One guard whispered, "The world outside moves fast like the city winds, yet here the spirits still speak." The other guard nodded. "And we must hear them, brother, for a kingdom without its roots becomes like a tree, ready to fall." Outside the palace gates, the contrast was sharp and powerful. Far in the distance, sleek skyscrapers rose into the sky, glass towers reflecting the morning light. Cars rushed across wide roads, their horns loud and restless. Neon signs glowed even in daylight, shouting their presence to the world. The modern city danced with energy, fast money, loud streets, and lights that never slept. But behind the palace, just a few steps away, the old village road stretched quietly. Dusty paths curved between mud houses with straw roofs, and children ran barefoot, chasing goats and laughter. Old women sat under mango trees, telling stories of spirits and heroes. Their voices carried wisdom older than the palace walls themselves. This kingdom lived between two worlds, one racing toward the future, the other holding tightly to the past. As the morning breeze swept through, the palace curtains fluttered like wings. A young servant girl looked out toward the shining towers and asked softly, "Will the city swallow our stories one day?" An elder beside her placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. His voice was slow, deep, and heavy with meaning. "No, child, a story only dies when the heart forgets it, and the hearts of Nandaba are still strong." The drums grew louder through the halls, echoing like an ancient heartbeat. The guards stood taller. The servants moved with purpose. And the kingdom waited, because something was coming, something that would test both the shining palace and the dusty village roads. The elder raised his eyes toward the horizon, where tradition and modern life touched like fire and water. "Today," he murmured, "the spirits watch closely. Change is walking toward us with fast steps." His words hung in the air, heavy like a warning and soft like a prayer. And so the story began. Behind the shining palace of Nandaba, where gold walls touched the morning sun, the world changed like a page turning in an old storybook. The smooth marble and bright halls slowly faded into dusty paths, winding to the heart of the old village. Here, time walked with quieter steps. The village roads were dry and cracked, shaped by many years of footsteps. Children running, mothers carrying baskets, and elders walking slowly with heavy thoughts. The mud houses stood in rows, their walls warm from the sun, their roofs made of straw and hope. Each house carried its own story, laughter, tears, and secrets whispered only to the night. Small shops lined the paths, wooden stalls with faded paint, selling fried cassava, old tools, and handmade bracelets. A boy called out, "Fresh fruits, sweet like the morning breeze." His voice rose above the chatter of the market. Nearby, a woman stirred a pot over an open fire. The aroma spread through the air, rich and comforting. She smiled at the people passing by. "Eat, children," she said warmly. "Food cooks better when shared." But the greatest sight in the village was the giant baobab tree standing at its center. Its wide trunk seemed to hold the weight of the world, and its branches stretched out like arms ready to shelter the entire kingdom. People believed the ancestor spirits slept inside the tree, watching over the living. Under its shade sat the elders, old men and women with eyes full of wisdom. Their skin carried wrinkles like maps of long journeys, and their voices were soft but powerful. One elder tapped his carved walking stick on the ground. "This tree," he said, "has seen kings rise and fall. It has heard the truth and the lies of our people." Another elder nodded. "And it knows when danger walks near." A group of children gathered around them, sitting cross-legged in the dust. One little girl asked, "Grandfather, why does the palace shine so bright while our houses stay small?" The elder smiled with a sadness only age could carry. "Child, a house may be small, but a heart full of truth is larger than any palace. Remember this." The wind rustled through the baobab leaves, as if agreeing with him. In the distance, the skyscrapers of the modern city flashed with silver light, cars moving, horns shouting, and tall towers scraping the sky. But the villagers did not look toward them. Their eyes stayed on their own world, where every corner held the spirit of old stories. A young man carrying firewood paused and said softly, "The city grows louder each day. It pushes closer, like a lion ready to claim new land." The elders exchanged a troubled look. One whispered, "The world of fast lights does not understand the slow, beating heart of a village. But soon they will meet, and when they do, the spirits must guide us." The baobab leaves trembled above them, casting dancing shadows on the ground. The village continued its day, simple, warm, and deeply rooted, while tension quietly stirred beneath the surface, waiting to rise like a storm. And just beyond the palace walls, the old roads and the modern world stood side by side, ready to shape the fate of Nandaba. Though the kingdom of Nandaba stood only a short walk from the village, it felt like two different worlds were breathing side by side, never touching, never understanding. The palace sparkled with gold trim, its tall gates guarded by men in mixed armor, steel plates shining like moonlight and tribal symbols painted in red and black, reminding everyone of the ancestors' watchful eyes. Inside, the royal halls echoed with soft drum beats and the scent of burning incense. Servants moved quietly, feet brushing against marble floors. Every corner whispered luxury, painted murals, tall pillars, and woven carpets that looked untouched by human steps. But outside those grand gates, just beyond the shadow of the palace walls, the village breathed a very different air. The dusty ground cracked beneath bare feet, and the houses made of mud and straw held stories of hunger and hope. The people worked hard, hands roughened by time, voices tired yet strong. Even though the two worlds stood so close that a child could throw a stone from one to the other, their hearts were far apart. An old woman sweeping her porch looked up at the shining palace and sighed. She muttered, "They feast while we count grains." A young boy beside her asked, "Grandmother, do they ever think of us?" She shook her head slowly. "Only the wind carries our troubles to their windows, but the windows stay closed." Across the palace gate, two young guards whispered quietly as they watched the village in the distance. "Look at them," one guard said. "They struggle every day." The other replied softly, "Yet their spirits remain strong, sometimes stronger than ours." Their voices carried a hint of guilt, though neither would admit it. The villagers felt the pressure of the kingdom's wealth, like a silent weight on their backs. Some believed the palace had forgotten them. Others thought it chose to forget. Near the baobab tree, a group of elders sat in deep thought. One elder tapped a stick on the earth and said, "Two drums beat in this land, one loud with pride, the other soft with pain. But when drums do not beat together, the dance of life becomes troubled." Another added, "A storm will rise if the palace keeps its back turned." The village children played, their laughter bright, but even their joy felt fragile, as if carried by the wind that could shift at any moment. Meanwhile, inside the palace, the king stood near a window, looking out the village barely visible behind the walls. His face was unreadable. Beside him, a royal advisor spoke boldly. "Your Majesty, the village grows restless. They believe you have abandoned them." The king frowned, his jaw tightening. "Their struggles echo in my heart, but the kingdom faces its own storms." "But a storm ignored becomes a fire," the advisor warned. The king said nothing. Outside, a bird flew between the palace and the village, a small creature crossing worlds that humans could not. It was clear to all. The distance between the kingdom and the village was only a few steps, but the tension between their lives, that distance was wide like a river with no bridge. And though the land was peaceful on the surface, every heart, rich and poor, felt the same silent truth. Something was coming, something that would force both worlds to face each other. Morning light spread over the kingdom of Nandaba like a golden cloth, touching the palace first before it reached the village behind it. The palace walls glittered in the sun, their gold trims shining so brightly that even birds seemed to slow down as they flew past. Inside those walls, echoes of old traditions lived, drums, chants, and stories whispered by elders. Yet outside, tall glass buildings of the modern city stood like giants, their lights blinking even during daylight. In the village, life moved slower. Under the mighty baobab tree, a group of women gathered with baskets of grain. Their voices mixed with the rustling leaves as they spoke in hushed tones. "Ah," one woman hissed, "every day new machines come to the city. Soon they will come to our lands, too." Another woman shook her head. "These modern ways, they swallow everything. First the markets." An old man resting on a low stool tapped a stick on the ground. He murmured. "When the river grows too fast, it drowns the old paths. I fear the same is happening here." A young villager standing nearby replied. "But elder, can we stop the wind when it blows?" Modern life is spreading. Even the palace uses shining machines now. The old man looked at the palace towers in the distance, his face thoughtful. "Change is not the enemy, child. Forgetting who we are, that is the true danger." Meanwhile, inside the palace courtyard, the atmosphere was different. Workers dressed in clean uniforms spoke excitedly as they moved between the halls. One young palace maid whispered to her friend, "Have you heard? The king plans to build a new learning center with computers. They say children from both the palace and the village may study there." Her friend smiled brightly. "That would be a blessing. No more walking far to the city. The world is changing, and we must walk with it." Two guards polishing their shields joined the conversation. "Progress brings opportunities," one said proudly. "Look at our armor, strong metal, but with symbols of our tribes, old and new together." But the older guard beside him frowned. "Yes, but I fear we lean too much toward the new. A tree that forgets its roots will fall." The younger guard shrugged. "Roots remain, old man. It is the branches that reach the sky." Their words, though spoken lightly, carried a deeper meaning, one heard by many but understood by few. As the palace drums began their afternoon rhythm, the sound rolled across the land like a warm breeze. Some villagers paused, remembering the comfort of old traditions. Others continued working, dreaming of the modern city lights. The kingdom stood like a bridge between two worlds, one full of wisdom and stories, the other full of speed and shining promise. And though the tension was gentle now, everyone knew that one day the choices made by the kingdom would shape the destiny of both worlds. Even the wind seemed to whisper a warning as it traveled between the palace towers and the village huts. Change is coming. Walk wisely. Evenings settle over the kingdom like a warm blanket, fading the bright gold of the palace into a softer glow. Torches flickered along the walls, mixing with the distant blinking lights of the modern city. Inside the royal courtyard, the air felt heavy, not with danger, but with decisions. The royal family gathered around the ancient fire pit carved with ancestral symbols. It had burned for generations, a flame never allowed to die. Each spark that rose into the air carried memories of the past. Queen Malika was the first to speak. Her voice was calm, but the worry in her eyes was easy to see. "The world changes faster than we can breathe," she whispered. "But our customs, they hold our spirit together." King Jabari sat beside her, his posture strong, but his face thoughtful. He looked toward the city lights shining just beyond the palace walls. "Wealth makes our kingdom powerful," he said slowly. "But power without identity becomes empty." Their eldest son, Prince Cato, stepped forward. He wore robes decorated with both tribal beads and modern fabric, a symbol of the land's conflict stitched into his clothes. "Father," he said, "the young people want progress. They want machines, education, new ways of living. If we refuse, they will leave for the city." His younger sister, Princess Amara, added softly, "But if we change too much, we may forget what makes us who we are." Her small voice seemed to echo louder than the drums outside. For a moment, no one spoke. The fire crackled like an old storyteller, clearing his throat before delivering a warning. The king finally stood and walked to the edge of the courtyard where the palace ended and the village roofs began. He stretched out his hand, as if touching both worlds at once. "Look," he said quietly, "the city shows us the future, but the village reminds us of our soul." The queen joined him, placing her hand over his. "Our people walk between two worlds," she said. "If we do not guide them, they will be torn apart." From the shadows, the old palace elder Ndigu stepped forward. His staff tapped the earth with each step. He bowed and spoke in a voice that sounded like the wind passing through old trees. "A kingdom that forgets its roots," he said, "will rise fast and fall faster." Then he lifted his staff toward the city lights. "But a kingdom that refuses to grow will wither before its time." The family listened silently, knowing his words carried the weight of generations. Prince Cato looked from the elder to the city, then back to the fire. "So what do we do?" he asked. Elder Ndugu smiled faintly. "You must walk the middle path, wealth in one hand and tradition in the other. Only then will the kingdom stand." As the fire crackled louder, a warm wind brushed the courtyard as if the ancestors themselves approved. The king placed his hand on his son's shoulder. "Tomorrow," he said, "we begin the work of guiding our people. Not toward the city, not backward into the past, but forward with our identity intact." Princess Amara nodded with quiet confidence. "Let the world change," she said, "but let our hearts stay true." The ancient flame rose higher for a moment, bright, bold, unbroken, signaling a small resolution. And somewhere in the distance, both the city lights and the village torches flickered in the same rhythm, as if agreeing with the royal family's choice. The night settled softly over the kingdom, carrying with it the whispers of both the old world and the new. Inside the palace courtyard, the prince stood still, staring at the glowing lamps that circled the ancient baobab tree. That tree had watched kings rise and fall for hundreds of years, and tonight it watched the prince's heart struggle between two paths. The maid, Abeni, approached quietly, holding a wooden bowl of water for royalty. Her steps were light, but her spirit trembled. She could feel the heaviness in the air, as if the ancestors themselves were watching the moment unfold. "Your Highness," she said softly, lowering her head. The prince turned to her. His voice was calm, but the storm in his eyes could not be hidden. "Abeni, this kingdom is changing. The elders want me to lead it their way, but the new council wants something different. If I take one path, I betray the other." Abeni swallowed, her heart beating faster. "My prince, why do you tell me this?" "Because," the prince said, stepping closer, "you understand both worlds. You grew up with the stories of the elders, yet you move with the courage of the new age. You see things I cannot." Abeni looked down at her hands, unsure she deserved such words. "I am only a maid." "No," he replied firmly. "You are the voice of the people, and you are the only person I trust." For a moment, the world grew silent around them. Even the wind paused, listening. Abeni raised her eyes slowly. "Your Highness, the old ways carry wisdom, but the new ways carry survival. A leader must walk with both feet, one in the past, one in the future. If you choose one and abandon the other, the kingdom will break." The prince studied her face, feeling her words carve truth inside him. "But," she added, her voice trembling, "this path you choose will also decide my fate." "How so?" he asked, stepping closer. Abeni hesitated. The firelight touched her face, revealing her fear. "If you choose the old ways, the elders will never let you stand beside someone like me. But if you choose the new ways, they will say you have abandoned your blood." The prince's breath tightened. "Abeni, I never wanted the throne to decide who I could care for." Abeni's eyes softened with pain, but she forced a small smile. "A king does not walk for himself. He walks for his people." A distant drumbeat echoed from the village, reminding them of tradition, duty, and the unseen eyes of the ancestors. The prince looked toward the horizon, one side dark with ancient forests, the other glowing with new torches and trade roads. "This crossroads," he whispered, "it will change everything." Abeni stepped back, holding her heart as if it might fall apart. "Then choose wisely, my prince. For whatever you decide tonight will shape not only your future, but mine as well." The wind finally moved, brushing past them like a warning from the spirits. And in that moment, both the prince and the maid understood. The meeting of the old and the new would not only define the kingdom, it would decide whether their hearts would stand together or be torn apart.